Welcome to Drew Code Sports Talk, everybody. I am your host, Cody. I am joined with my co-host. You guys know him as the voice of the Sanger West Hornets, Coach Drew. Man, I'm so happy that you're back, man, for the vacation, but you're back. And
yes.
I'm so excited for this episode, man. How have you been? Tell me everything.
Been good, man. I've been great. I'm very happy to be back. This feels unfamiliar in a lot of ways. I'm used to being in my car recording, focusing on driving.
You got a new background there. It's not a seatbelt in your car seat, you know?
So yeah, no, it's good to be back for sure. Busy schedule right now. We're in the thick of basketball season now.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Thanksgiving as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be back and to be able to do this episode. I'm sad that I missed the guest appearance that we had, but we'll have to do it another time. But yeah, I'm doing good. Just very busy. So how have you been, man?
Same, man. A little bit busy, but it's slowing down in my hotel industry. So we're kind of going down towards the slow season. So which means you save money, don't schedule a lot. And it's the grind before you get on the other side of the new year and you do it all over again. But other than that, man, we're good. We're doing Haley's birthday pretty soon. Han had his birthday a couple of weeks ago, so he is a whole 19 years old now, which is crazy. And so yeah, dude, life's just been busy and jam-packed and sports in between all that, which is fun. But for those that don't know, if you guys don't listen to the pod very often, but Drew has a Sanger West podcast, Stingers Up, that he does pretty regularly. I'd say weekly almost. Last week, though, you were cranking them out. You just had a lot on your mind. And so, so you had a lot. But so for those in our Drew Code audience, do you mind sharing a few minutes on what's new in the world of Drew and Sanger West?
So last year I was assistant varsity boys basketball coach, which I loved, had a great time with, learned a ton, and was approached just before tryouts. So I was already fully into boys basketball, like what was going on with it, and got approached by Coach Campbell and Coach Barajas, who are the girls' basketball coaches. And they said, hey, we're going to have enough girls for a frosh team, so we're setting up a frosh team. Would you want to be head coach? And I was like, I mean, first of all, of course, that would be great. But, I'm doing school. I'm almost done at Fresno City. So I'm like, I don't know if I can take the time to be a head coach right now. Like, even as it is, I wasn't going to be, fully into the boys basketball scene because I was going to have to miss days because of school and whatnot. And, I told them the same thing. And they said, okay, well, maybe let's think about next year. And I was like, yeah, let's talk about next year and let's, we'll ramp it up. So after, so that was like on a Friday. So then on the weekend, coming back on a Monday, Coach Campbell and Coach Barajas approached me again. They said, listen, if we hypothetically could we could cover everything that you were concerned about, would you want to do it? I was like, I mean, listen, I would be lying if I said I wasn't interested. And they were like, okay, we'll talk to your wife. So I talked to my wife and I said, all right, what are we going to do? And she was like, I think this is an opportunity. Obviously, all of our questions that we had have been answered, and they're willing to work with you on this. And, you get to be the head coach, and, there's a pay increase in that as well. And so they're like, I mean, we'll make it work. Let's do it. And so I said, okay. So next day I came and I told them, and then I talked to Coach Spielman, the boys basketball coach, and let him know. And he was very gracious enough to be like, hey man, like, good luck to you. Congratulations. That's really awesome. So it was really cool. It was, it's a lot of change. It's different. I've only been with the boys for about a year, and it's very different talking with the girls, because with the girls you got to be a little more aware of how you say things, and you don't want to go too far where they're just like, well, I don't care, I'm just going to quit. So you
Yeah.
have to kind of walk that line, if you will. But you know what? It's been good because it's more my personality. I'm not very good at being the bad guy, if that makes sense. Like I'm not always a big yeller. I would rather just teach you than just yell at you, And I'm not saying that's all they do at boys basketball, but boys, they handle it a little bit more because like they're intense. They want to be, they want to be the best, and of course, the girls do as well. But they understand, the world around them. It's not just basketball all the time. And so it's been good. It's been a great transition. I'm loving it. It's very challenging. I'm learning a lot. But I've also brought in some things from the boys basketball team and some things that I've talked to Coach Campbell or Coach Barajas that they've been doing on the varsity team. So I can kind of get these girls prepared for when it's their time on varsity. So far it's been really good. We actually had an up and down practice this morning. Started off kind of rough, made the girls run a little bit more. And then all of a sudden we came back and we did really good. And we kind of did a scrimmage game against the JV team. And we ended up actually handling our own pretty well, which was good. It was very encouraging. So it was a great sight to see today. So.
Right on, man. That's really, really cool. And obviously you've told me these updates before, so I'm getting a chance to have the audience hear it, I think is really cool. When is your guys' first regular season game?
So I'm going to look at it right now. I should have had this up because I should have known. But I want to say it's December 11th.
Oh, okay.
Let me double check, though. Okay. Yeah, download whatever you need to download. Nope, that's not what I needed.
Don't download anything. God, man, that's how you get on those sites you're not supposed to be on.
Oh, I was going to say that's how your computer crashes.
I want to make it clear, not mine. I don't download any. Actually, my computer did kind of crash last week, and I texted you about it. And fortunately, the good people at Apple were able to bring it back to life. And I couldn't tell you the stress I felt not knowing if my laptop was going to make it out alive or not. And it's not like it's an old one too. It's fairly new. It was just, it went through an update that didn't push through, and I was stuck in this cycle. And dude, I couldn't tell you the type of frustration or angst it had put me in. Like, that's something I've never felt before. And that was really, really strange. So fortunately, Apple's come a long way where you can download all your stuff on the cloud, and even if you wipe it clean and you put it back, it's all right where you left it. And so for the most part, I don't have anything missing, and it's still running smooth as we're recording right now. So
I was wrong. It's not December 11th. So there's still the issue right now that we have is because we started so late as a frosh team, we're still gathering games up. Right now we only have a total of 6, and it's more towards like, they call it season. It's the teams in your league. So they call it, that's the season. And then they call like the games before that the preseason. And those just like filler games basically. But right now we don't have games on the schedule, but right now all the games should be like in season. So that's going to be like January, February. So those are going to be probably our games. We might add some coming up here in December, but as of right now, we don't have anything tentative.
All right. Well, just tune into Stingers Up and you'll inform the audience. So.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. So let's dive into it, Drew. So to kick the show off, obviously we're both here, and as I've got my hat on for support, I don't know what a Drew Code show would be without talking about the Raiders. And, unfortunately, it's official. We had our in-season sweep with the Denver Broncos at home in Las Vegas. And so, Drew, break it down for me. And when you were watching the game, or as much as what you saw, what were your takeaways from the game?
Exactly what I thought. Coming into this year, I wasn't high on Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is notorious for starting off looking pretty good in the beginning, and as the season progresses, he just doesn't do anything close to what he normally did. And I'm not hating on the guy. I just think he's a better backup. I don't think he's anything more than that. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is the answer either. I think Aiden O'Connell is actually he's more conservative than Gardner Minshew, which in this offense right now, I think is probably what we're going to have to deal with. We're just going to have to live with, a 3rd and 8, and he's going to throw it maybe 4 yards, and hopefully our guy can make a play to get a first down. But most of the time we're probably just going to be punting. So that's kind of what I feel with Aiden O'Connell. He's more of I'm going to go the safe route. I'm not going to worry about anything else. This and that. And then, getting Desmond Ridder, listen, I thought he'd be a little more talented. His arm is not really wowing me. His scrambling is fine. I mean, that's the added element that we didn't have with Minshew or O'Connell. He's a guy that we can rely on with his legs if the play breaks down or the first or second option aren't open. But his quarterback awareness, his awareness in the pocket, outside of the pocket even, is just, it's awful. If I'm being honest, like I was saying it this morning to you, Cody, like I don't see anything. I don't understand how he is a running quarterback, yet you can't have the awareness of a guy kind of breathing down your neck, and he just stares receivers down. I mean, absolutely stares receivers down. And so he's a nice fill-in, and I think he'll probably start next week. But to be honest, man, this is what I thought the Raiders were going to be. This is why I had said I'm betting the under on 6.5 wins, because I don't trust in Minshew. He's never proven that he can do it a season long. Aiden O'Connell, I've never been high on him. And then Desmond Ridder, who we didn't know we were going to have at the time, but he's not doing much better. His awareness is probably the worst out of the 3 quarterbacks. So, What about you?
Yeah, so I did not watch this game. I actually had to watch the highlights that were on YouTube. And from what I saw, look, there's one thing that coming into this game we knew, and that was the Denver Broncos defense is the real deal. And it's intense. In the first game, it got after us. I'm actually kind of surprised because our offensive line only gave up really 2 sacks. Actually, I think 3 in total, but 2 of them were on Desmond Ridder. But for the most part, they did a pretty good job at protecting the quarterback when it was Minshew in, and it wasn't until the late game situation where obviously it's a passing situation, so we're not running the ball. That's when our offensive line really had a hard time stopping that front, and it's a very aggressive front. And when it pressures the quarterback, obviously they have the secondary to back up the coverage, so that's a difficult one. I think one of the things in this game that I'm seeing is I think our team has deeper issues than just an offensive identity that they don't know what to do. They didn't run the ball very effective. They haven't ran it effective majority of the season. They threw the ball 53 times on Sunday, which is not great. Very one-dimensional. Yeah. We obviously let go of Luke Getsy. I think it was week 9 in the season. And since then, I don't see any monumental improvements. Like Scott Turner is now the OC. We hired former Oakland Raider coach Norv Turner to come in to kind of help guide Scott, his son, into how to manage an offense and all that stuff. And to be truthful, I don't see anything that leads me to believe that Scott Turner is this, hidden gem of a coordinator that's going to make a world of difference, if I'm being honest. Now, granted, 2 weeks into his new program, maybe it's not enough time to really know what we got, but we have injuries on the defensive side of the ball. The offense can't really get into rhythm. Quarterback is an issue, which you pointed out too. Really, a lot of what we have to do is kind of beyond just coaching, and it's beyond just, oh, we need a quarterback in here to like lead this team. It's just further than that, in my opinion. And what you had said early on in the season, where you would take the under on the 6.5 win mark that they were put at, according to Vegas or whatever the line was, and if you were going to bet on the total wins. And, sad to say is I'll be shocked if we get to 3 to 4 wins with how we're playing. And I just don't know if we're going to get to a point to where we're in rhythm. I feel like we're trying to just get through this season and get through the off season, and then we'll just go from there. And at this point now, I want to look respectable on the field, but still improve our chances to get a high draft pick. And as we sit here today, Drew, we're sitting with the number 3 pick. And if it wasn't for the New York Giants, we actually might get closer to the number 1 pick. But they seem to be worse than us. Hard to believe. But, like I said, I think some of our issues is deeper than quarterback play. And
yeah, that's for sure. But I mean, this is the reason I brought up the quarterback or all the quarterbacks is because that's where I looked at and go, like, look, we look great at receiver. We looked pretty at the time. I thought we were decent on the running back. Mm-hmm. We had drafted a couple of linemen who, for all intents and purposes, have been pretty decent. Mm-hmm. Defensively, they started looking really good. Max Crosby was a wrecking ball. Mm-hmm. We had I'm blanking, Nate Hobbs, who's a certified number 1 cornerback probably on most teams. He's really good, but you can't foresee injuries. And he got hurt. Bennett got hurt, who's our other corner, who's been a really good corner, and Jack Jones kind of regressed, excuse me. And so, it's just all these things that you couldn't have foreseen. Mm-hmm. But in the beginning of the year, coming on to here, my thought was, honestly, just the quarterback play is a big factor. That's mm-hmm. why I didn't like them, and that's why I brought it up now. This is what you and I both were. I mean, I think you were a little higher on them, but for the most part, like, this is why we're not going to the playoffs, is right. We don't have a quarterback. And you're kidding yourself if you're talking yourself into you thinking, oh yeah, Gardner Minshew is going to take us. No, Gardner Minshew is not going to take us to the promised land.
Well, and another thing too is not only, you named off a lot of really good defensive players that we have that are pretty pivotal in our team, but the one big name that has not been in the lineup since week 4 due to injury is Christian Wilkes. Like, we signed him in the offseason. When he played in those games, he was a force up in the middle, which was creating additional pressures with Crosby, Kuntz, who has been out all year with a knee injury. And so we've been kind of rotating. And fortunately, Tyrese Wilson has been coming on strong. He's had a couple of sacks in the last 2 to 3 games. So he's looking like the defensive end that we had brought in. So the defense, if it's healthy, looks like it's what can withstand teams from putting a bunch of points on us. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the reason why I was so high on him is if we just had a similar offense to what we had last year, where we ran the ball, maybe conservative play calling. At the time we had Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. I felt like that combination could get us to be a pretty effective offense if ran properly. Yep. What I didn't foresee is how poorly called plays were with Luke Getsy. And I think if I had to also be transparent, I think what I was also disappointed in is how long it took for this change to happen. 10 weeks or 9 weeks or whatever the change was, I think that's a good enough sample size that AP saw with Luke Getsy. But I think what I'm most disappointed in is, you mean to tell me that if we wanted to look this bad, it had to take Luke Getsy? If that was the case, bring in the crew we had last year, we probably would have been a better team, because at least then we could move the ball a little bit better. Yeah. So that's what I'll say. Now, on to where we're at today. and this kind of is going to segue into my next question for you, Drew. Now where we're at today, clearly injuries, offense, Devontae Adams fiasco, which I'm going to ask you about later on in the show as well. Obviously, we're in a position now to get a franchise quarterback that we haven't had since Derek Carr when we drafted him in 2014. So with that being said, is there a college quarterback that you want the Raiders to go after? And if so, who is that quarterback?
The quarterback I really want is Arch Manning. I really like Arch Manning. And I got to be perfectly honest, I really like Quinn Ewers, the quarterback for Texas. I really do like him. But I think that's how much better Arch Manning is. And I know a lot of people are like, well, okay, you know, especially you're probably like, okay, dude, you're a Peyton Manning fan. Of course, you want Arch to be good. But no, in all seriousness, from what I've seen, the kid is so like advanced for where he should be.
Yeah.
I think the only reason they started Quinn Ewers this year is because it was like, well, you know, he's going to go in the draft next year or after this year. So might as well just let him play. And then we'll throw in Arch because I got to be honest, man. I felt like Texas played a lot better with Arch. I think Quinn has a better connection with some of the receivers, and I think that's because he's been there for a little bit longer. Right. But all in all, I've been way more impressed. So, I mean, if I'm being truthful, I want Manning. Manning, and I don't think he's going to be a Peyton Manning. I don't think he's going to be that. I don't think he's going to be necessarily. I think he could be a hybrid of like an Eli and Peyton, but his arm is really good. But the one thing that we haven't seen with a Manning name is that he can run. And that's very effective. If Peyton and Eli could have ran a little bit more, like, honestly, probably would have won a few more Super Bowls, if I'm being honest. So, anyway, I digress. But so I'm just going to say this first. I'm looking at the top 5 quarterbacks coming into the NFL draft, and they have Shedeur Sanders at number 1, Cam Ward at number 2, Quinn Ewers at number 3, Jalen Milroe at number 4, and Garrett Nussmeier at number 5 from LSU. I wouldn't have that. My ranking would be Shedeur Sanders at number 1. I don't think that's really in question at all, to be honest. I would put Quinn Ewers at number 2. I would probably put Jalen Milroe at number 3. I would put Cam Ward at number 4. And then I would actually have Dylan Gabriel at number 5.
The quarterback out of Oregon?
Out of Oregon. And here's why. I don't think there's a debate with Shedeur Sanders. Yeah. I think Shedeur Sanders coming into this year was like, all right, man, you got to be the best quarterback in the nation. And he was like, okay, sure. And he did it. So I don't think there's any question that Sanders is the number 1 quarterback. Cam Ward is interesting because I think he's having a really successful year. I mean, not debatable there. He's having a really great year. My worry is it took him a couple of transfers to really show what he could do. Like when he was at Washington State, he was meh, if that makes sense. Like he was okay, or as the kids would say, mid. He was mid. Yeah. But I worry that, first of all, the kid's not loyal, obviously. And secondly, I worry that he's in an offense, or he's on a team that has way better athletes than he had over at Washington State. Like you're getting more like 3, 4, even sometimes 5-star, whereas Washington State, you're probably primarily getting those 3-star guys. Maybe you'll get lucky with a 4-star, but you're probably topping out at 3 stars. And I think he's benefiting from that. I think this Miami team not only is, and I'm not saying the kid's not good, because obviously they wouldn't be successful if he wasn't good. Okay, he's a good quarterback, but do I want him? Do I trust him to lead an NFL team? I don't. I don't think Cam Ward is the guy, because honestly, the 2 transfers does bother me, and I do think that is a factor. And this is why I have Quinn Ewers at number 2. Is this guy, by all intents and purposes, when Texas was struggling, he could have left.
Mm-hmm.
He could have easily transferred to like an Ohio State, an LSU, probably even an Alabama, if I'm being honest. But he decided, hey, I'm going to stick with Texas. And you see the growth that he has had. Whereas Cam Ward, it's kind of hard to see that growth because he's changed teams. So it's like, okay, is it the player or is it the team or is it kind of a combination of both? Like, that's hard to see, in my opinion. Now, I have no problem saying that, hey, I was wrong on Cam Ward if he ends up being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. To me, as I see it right now, I don't see him doing that. And I think Quinn Ewers is a better quarterback, not only because I think he's got a really good arm and he seems to get the best out of his guys, but he can run as well. And Cam Ward, again, doesn't have that ability. Quinn Ewers is not just running all the time. Shedeur Sanders, by all like I'm looking at all these 40 times, he's got at least in the top 10 quarterbacks, he's got the second best 40 time. But you never see Shedeur Sanders run. Why? Because he doesn't have to. And he doesn't feel like, oh, I need to run just to, you know what I mean? And so he has that ability, but that's what I want to see in quarterbacks is a guy who, listen, if I need to run, I'm going to run. But if I don't need to, I'm going to stay in the pocket and deliver one right into the chest. And I think Quinn Ewers is one of those guys that I would like better because, again, as we said, the offensive linemen that we had drafted for the Raiders, if you had Quinn Ewers, it's not going to be perfect pocket all the time. And so you need a guy who can run a little bit, who can kind of shimmy in and out of the pocket and, deliver a good football. Right now, Shedeur Sanders is my number 1, but my only issue is the Giants are just ahead of us. And obviously, they're going to take a quarterback. So if it's not Shedeur Sanders, I would like Quinn Ewers. I don't know if you need to keep your third pick to get Quinn Ewers, if I'm being perfectly honest. I feel like Cam Ward would probably go ahead of him. And if that's the case, you can drop back a little bit in the draft and maybe gain an extra, draft pick or 2. That would be the move I would make. I would actually be okay with even Jalen Milroe because although he's still kind of struggling at times, I don't think Alabama gets the best out of quarterbacks. I think it was an outlier with Tua Tagovailoa because as a freshman right away, he was just throwing darts in the national championship game. So they were like, okay, we're going to turn into a passing team. And that's what they ended up doing. Whereas Jalen Milroe, now they're like, okay, well, he's a running quarterback, so we're just going to run it. And if you're looking at the stats that these guys have, Jalen Milroe is 6'2", 225. He's built to be able to absorb the hits, but also be able to deliver the football wherever he needs to, which he has shown. His decision-making sometimes is hit and miss, but I think he falls in love with my guys are super athletic. I'm just going to, 50-50 ball, and I think he's lost more of those than he's won this year. But I think you can get that. You can coach that out of him because Caleb Williams is the same way. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see that Caleb Williams is starting to slowly get progressively better and better and is now starting to look like, oh, okay, that's why he's the number 1 That's why he was the number 1 quarterback taken.
So I am concerned, as what you said, that the Giants are ahead of us. So if there is a quarterback, presumably that we do fall in love with, and I'll say Shedeur Sanders to me is probably the number 1 quarterback that I'm looking at as well. And a couple of factors would be, I would penalize Shedeur Sanders for how long he's basically been coached by Deion Sanders, his dad. And to me, I saw that as a little bit of a negative because I don't really know how he responds to another coach's methods or way or whatnot, all because Deion Sanders wants him to, be coached the right way in whatever form or fashion that is. However, I will say that one thing that I'm impressed with Shedeur is he's consistent regardless whether it was Jackson State. He basically was extremely efficient, protected the football, didn't get sacked as much. But I think also too, when you're in the, Division I, playing against top-notch competition every single Saturday, Friday, whatever day of the week you're playing, you're going to get players that are as fast as you now and other players that are going to chase you down. And that's what we saw last year when Shedeur Sanders was sacked a lot, and a lot of that was his own fault, just not getting rid of the ball in enough time and, staying in the pocket for too long. We saw Shedeur take a lot of beating that he probably shouldn't have. Still was able to get the ball out and play against really tough competition. This year, though, we see that Shedeur Sanders has taken a little bit of a step forward to where he's throwing the ball with, a lot more accurate. He's at 74, almost 74% completion percentage, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's very good in terms of, touchdown to interception ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And it's against better competition, and the team is achieving more. Granted, they had a bad game against Florida where Florida just beat Colorado. However, Shedeur Sanders, though, still had a pretty good game in all things considered, even though it was a loss. And, will we say that Shedeur Sanders benefits from having Travis Hunter and all these other players? Sure. But I think it does help that you have Tom Brady, who basically has mentored him since he was in high school. And now he's a minority owner with the Las Vegas Raiders. So there is a connection there.
Yeah.
The reason why.
Yeah. Let me cut you off right here, because I think a lot of people forget. Like, a lot of people go, oh, well, this quarterback has so-and-so. Okay, but they all do. Peyton Manning had Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. Tom Brady had, it was Wes Welker, and then it was Julian Edelman, and then it was Rob Gronkowski. Like, these quarterbacks have their guys.
Right.
So, like, Shedeur Sanders having Travis Hunter, it's kind of funny that they hold it against him. Like, oh, well, he's got Travis Hunter. It's like, okay, but yeah, so does every other quarterback. Like, you're not successful if you don't have your go-to guy. So I just want to cut you off, because it bugs me when people use that. Like, I'm not saying you were, but it just bugs me when people use that. I'm like, well, he's got Travis Hunter. Well, yeah, you have to have your safety net, and that's his safety net. And it just so happens he's one of the most athletic guys in the league or in the college football.
Right. No, I agree. For certain player debates, when we're nitpicking a quarterback and we say, oh, they're benefiting because they have all these weapons. So you're punishing him because his team got weapons around him to make him successful, and he's proving that he's successful with those weapons. But yet, if he didn't have any weapons around him, then we would then throw some sort of shade at him because, he doesn't have any help and he's not a very good quarterback. So we can't have it both ways. There's no such thing as a perfect quarterback that's going to outplay whoever they have, unless you're Patrick Mahomes, who finds a way to get his receivers incorporated, even though they're not the greatest of receiver bunches. But my point being, though, is Shedeur Sanders and Deion, especially Deion, has made it a point that he would help his son when he is drafted. And there are teams that they will just flat out say, we're not going to. Very much, ironically enough, could be like an Eli Manning situation when he was drafted by the Chargers and then refused to go play, which ended up starting the whole Phillip Rivers being traded from New York to go to San Diego and all that stuff way back then. I think this is very similar because
it wasn't that long ago. Shut up.
What year are we in? 2024, and this was 2004, 20 years ago, Drew.
Yeah,
and we remember all that. But what I would say, though, is I don't know how Deion feels about Shedeur going to the New York Giants, and I'll just point right now. I had a topic last week where I made the argument that the Jets are having arguably the worst season of any team. And I think the Giants are now making a late comeback to take that lead over them because they signed a guy to a $40 million contract within a matter of 10 minutes. Not only they benched him for a fourth string spot, cut him, and then the team, by all intents and purposes, quit on them at MetLife Stadium. And that's all within 1 week. And I don't know if Deion wants his son Shedeur to go through that. I would not be surprised if the Giants start looking for a coach after that. And then the rumors are going to be Dion going to the New York Giants, bringing his son and all this other stuff, which I don't think Dion wants to do. I don't think he wants to coach in the NFL, especially not for the Giants.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a world where Dion basically tells the Giants or Shedeur directly, like, you can draft me. I'm not playing for you guys. Flat out, to where then the Raiders would maybe then take the spot of drafting him at the third spot, or maybe they just swap draft picks. Who would have been the guy that you would have wanted? We'll trade you, so on and so forth. It's a realm of possibility, because I think there are some breadcrumbs to this where Shedeur Sanders, every time the Raiders lose, he tweets, "Thank God," which betters the chances of the Raiders to getting the top pick, which could solidify them to getting Shedeur Sanders. If we couldn't get Shedeur Sanders, though, a couple of quarterbacks that I'm okay with is Jalen Milroe, which I've mentioned on here before. All the things that you say are super valid on why I'm apprehensive of having him drafted. Although you did mention you're apprehensive about Cameron Ward, I would not be so apprehensive about Cameron Ward. I think regardless of him transferring, that happens nowadays in college football, so it's pretty common. Jalen Hurts, he transferred out of Alabama to go to Oklahoma, had a really good year, and he's on the Eagles now, and it's gone really well for him. Did he have a rough start and a rough seasons? Yeah, but for the most part, like, it was the decision that had to be done. For Cameron Ward, though, to play the way that he's doing, I think is really encouraging, and we're also making these assumptions without any combine, without any pro day film. So just to put that out there, there could be some quarterback out there that we did not think would be in the top 5 conversation, which happens every year. Yeah. And that's still a possibility. But for today, Shedeur Sanders would be the quarterback that I would target for the Raiders. However, Cameron Ward, I'm okay with the Raiders going after, because I like his mobility. I think he has a good enough arm to play in the NFL. Does he play a little bit more relaxed than I would like? Yes. However, I think when you get in the NFL and you play against athletes that are as fast as you and they're 215 pounds running at you full speed, I think that makes you a little bit more urgent and not so lackadaisical. Because in college, you can see some athletes where it's too easy for them. Can't do that in the NFL. If you're not a world-class athlete, if you're not on top of your stuff, you will get got in the NFL. Just ask Anthony Richardson when he tapped out a couple of weeks ago. Goes to show that just because you're the high draft pick does not mean that you won't get ran off the field. Yeah, literally. So,
well, he ran himself off.
I mean, he was tired. He was worn out. Yeah. So okay, so all this talk about the Raiders stuff. So I haven't really talked to you about the Raiders season on the show very often, and you and I talked about the Devontae Adams situation, and I don't know about you, but every week I have new information to just throw shade on at the New York Jets for the situation that they've put themselves in. And I'm kind of leaping ahead in our topics a little bit here, because I'm going to go around to the quarterback route and then we're going to circle back to another topic. But just to continue on the Jets love, the Jets are now rumored to cut Aaron Rodgers before next season. And I'm curious, Drew, where do you think he's going to go? What do you think Aaron Rodgers should do?
All right. First of all, it's wild that they're like, we're just going to release him.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you guys went above and beyond to get him. And now you're like, After 1 year, you didn't get 2 years with him. Yes, nope. He's on a 2-year contract. My thing is this. I think this proves that the New York Jets are a very poorly run organization, and here's why. Although Aaron Rodgers, has he been great? No. He's been pretty mid. As the kids would say. But let's be honest. I don't know what their expectation was for Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles injury. As much as I want to be on here and go, yeah, this is what I was worried about if the Raiders were to sign Aaron Rodgers. This is, blah, blah, blah. And it still is like, listen, he's older. He wasn't Tom Brady. If we're being honest, like Tom Brady really took care of himself, where I don't think Aaron Rodgers as much or cares as much about football that Tom Brady does. I think Aaron Rodgers loves football. I'm not saying that. I mean, he wouldn't be playing into his 40s if he didn't love it. But I just think Tom Brady was just that. That's why Tom Brady was always besting Aaron Rodgers. That's why it was Tom Brady, not Aaron Rodgers over Tom Brady all these years. But what I do think is that the New York Jets had unrealistic expectations, him coming off of the injury. Now, before he had that injury and he's having this type of season, completely understand. I completely get that. That makes a ton of sense for me. But what doesn't make a ton of sense for me is thinking that a 40-year-old or 41-year-old dude coming off a torn Achilles, this is probably one of the worst injury he's had in his career. I know he had a broken collarbone, but I think this Achilles, is a step above that.
Yeah.
And for you to come in here and be like, well, how come he's not just throwing dots left and right? He's still technically recovering. Like, I think that's what is getting lost in all of this talk is he's never going to be fully healthy. Maybe next year he might be, okay, now I know how I can play. But he's kind of playing through, like, trying to figure out how can I play with this injury. And I don't think people really are talking about that aspect of this type of an injury that they should be, because to be perfectly honest, the unrealistic expectations that the New York Jets had, and then they were like, oh, well, we'll just throw Devontae Adams and everything will work. And it's like, no, dude, it's not about who he has around him right now. He's trying to figure out how to play with this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he had an off season. Great. But sometimes it takes like a year to actually really, I mean, Kevin Durant, after he came off, this is a completely different sport, but after him coming off an Achilles, you could see that he was still trying to figure, and it looked like, oh, he may not ever be what he was. And then once he figured it out, now he's great again.
Yeah.
He's this dominant shooter, but he had to figure it out. It took him a year. And that's kind of what I see with Aaron Rodgers. It's taking him time to figure out how to play, if I'm being devil's advocate. Now, as much as I say all that, this is what I would say. I think this is the right move for the Jets. They have to rebuild. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to rebuild now. This was your chance. You spoiled it. Sorry. That sucks. Yeah. That's not great for you. So this is what you could do. He could, go to the Raiders. And I say this because we're a Raider fan. If he went to the Raiders, it's only because the Raiders lose out on Shedeur Sanders. Let's say because the Giants are a big market. He could end up saying, no, I want to go to the Giants. I want to be the quarterback that takes them to back to the Super Bowl since Eli Manning. It's very possible. And if that's the case, then that's more appealing than the Raiders right now, to be honest, because at least the Giants are somewhat of a still like, I want to go there type of a destination. I don't think the Raiders are right now. So you could go to the Raiders. The Raiders could keep Aaron Rodgers until maybe they're able to get an Arch Manning. Okay? That's possible. The other team that I actually, at first I was kind of like, I don't think so. But I think it could possibly happen, would be he could go to the Niners. And listen, with Brock Purdy's been playing well, but he's kind of having some injuries here and there. I could see them go, hey, Aaron, why don't you play for a year or two or whatever? Maybe that you can talk him into a backup. I doubt it, but I think that would be interesting. Or the other one, and I think a lot of people might have an issue with this, is he could go to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
And that would be, if anything, very interesting. It would be so fun to watch because it would not work out. Let me tell you that right now. It would not work out like the Cowboys would hope. But I see the Cowboys making that type of move. And then Aaron going, oh, finish my career off as a Cowboy, this America's team, then everyone will love me again. And that would just be a great ending to a career.
Yeah. Here's what's tough, because it's not only what you mentioned, the Achilles, but there's now reports where he has a pretty significant hamstring injury that he is refusing to get looked at by the medical staff of the New York Jets. And that's hampering any sort of recovery, rehab, whatever the case may be. And so not only is he dealing with recovering from a career-altering injury of the Achilles, but now he's got whatever hamstring, knee, and ankle issue that he is refusing to get looked at out of fear of, he's got to get put out for X amount of weeks and go on the IR or whatever. And to me, I don't know why at this point of the season you just don't go on IR and get yourself healthy for later in the season. Maybe look to next season, because clearly you're not getting the playoffs. Let's be honest, there's not a shot in hell that you're going to get into a wild card spot. So I don't know what this fantasy is. I'm going to play through this. What are we playing for? You're losing to the Patriots. You're losing to the Colts. You're losing to all these teams that supposedly you're better than, and you have all your friends there, and you still can't do it. Teams I think would benefit from them. Niners, I thought immediately would be a really, really good one. I can see Miami Dolphins, maybe making a call to Aaron Rodgers to see if he'd be willing to be in a backup role or in some form or fashion, because clearly when Tua was out with that concussion, they needed another quarterback that could facilitate that offense. And Florida is a warm weather state, so Aaron wouldn't have to worry about playing in the cold. And there's several different weapons around the Miami Dolphins that Aaron Rodgers, might have some success in. If he decided to stay in New York and just go next door or in the same building and just be the quarterback for the New York Giants, that would be another option. But, truthfully too, I think there's going to be a lot of apprehension because there's so many teams now that have quarterbacks that you really don't need to make rash decisions, because there's good quarterbacks now. Raiders don't have one. I really don't want them to go after Aaron Rodgers and here's why. If we get Aaron Rodgers and let's say we revamp the offense slightly, running back, maybe we get another receiver, that means that maybe we are middle of the pack kind of a team. Not as good as we're so good that we're not bad enough to get the number one pick, which I think is what it's going to require to get an Arch Manning. Because Arch Manning, when he has his season at Texas where he's the lead guy, in my opinion, he's going to just show that he's the best quarterback in the nation, because he looked like that when he played when he played and filled in for Ewers when he was injured. And I personally don't want the Raiders to have to wait to hopefully get an Arch Manning. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to solve anything for the Raiders. If anything, we're going to get another aging quarterback that's full of headlines that AP is not going to want to deal with. But again, I think this just goes to show that, Aaron Rodgers, you weep what you sow, man. With the bed that you've made with the New York Jets, you got a lie in it. And now, and I shared this on our TikTok, Drew, and you saw, there's now rumors that there's a rift between Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess, and I said this, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And now look what happened. Are the Raiders 2-9? Yes. Clearly we need a lot of work. But why do I feel like the Raiders are in a better position long-term than the Jets? Why do I feel like we have a ray of hope for the Raiders in the future, and the Jets feel like they're in purgatory and there really is no way of getting out of it in sight, at least in the immediate future? That's what I feel like when I look at the Jets and what Aaron Rodgers and how Woody Johnson has formed this team and how he's ran it.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a hypothetical for you just to see what you would think.
Okay.
Let's say the Giants draft Shedeur Sanders. We're out on Shedeur. We keep the third pick and we draft, I don't know, either a Cam Ward or a Quinn Ewers, okay? Because those are the 2 and 3.
Okay.
And what if the Raiders sign Aaron Rodgers, okay, for a 1-year deal?
Mm-hmm.
That quarterback, Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers, whatever, they learn under Aaron Rodgers for that year. And then after that, they're like, okay, we're out on Aaron Rodgers. You're done. Either he retires or that we let him go.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be okay with that scenario where it could be successful, but you're also building up that quarterback? Because, I mean, whatever the case, however you feel about Aaron Rodgers, to learn under Aaron Rodgers would be pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think we're arguing that.
Right.
So do you think that could be a successful tactic that the Raiders go and do?
I think that is logically probably a pretty good move in terms of like, hey, look, you have one of the best throwers of the football in NFL's history that you can have lead while your first round pick learns behind him, so on and so forth. I would say, though, Sam Darnold might be in the market and we need a bridge quarterback, right? We're not looking for a guy to mentor anybody because it's not like Aaron Rodgers has 2, 3, 4 more seasons to go. And what about if we had Sam Darnold for a season or two?
I mean, my only issue with that is I think what the Vikings are going through right now is it's starting to get harder and harder to say, okay, Sam, you did your job. Great. See you later. I think that's becoming a harder conversation for the Vikings. Whereas if he went with the Raiders, and let's say he does pretty good, like he's having this year, and we have whoever quarterback we draft sitting behind Sam Darnold, it's going to be a harder conversation and harder to pull off that, hey, why are we not going to play the hot hand? We're just going to play the guy like, oh, let's keep that guy learning under Sam Darnold for a couple more years. And then like maybe he could be really good. It could turn into, ironically, an Aaron Rodgers situation.
Sure.
Or it turns into, okay, Sam Darnold, you're doing great. And then now all of a sudden this dude's contract, let's say Quinn Ewers, for example, Quinn Ewers' contract is up and it's like, oh, we burned a first round pick and he hasn't played,
right.
And I mean, of course, that's not that hard of a decision after that because if he hasn't overcome Sam Darnold. But for me, it's like, okay, if you're going to spend a first round draft pick, go get a guy that is an easy out. Like Aaron Rodgers, you sign him to a 1-year deal. After that year, all right, dude, see you later. Like you can talk yourself into, oh, hey, he brought us to the playoffs. Like we were really good. But he's going to be 41, 42 years old at that point. And it's like, okay, well, we can't sign him to another huge contract. This is why we drafted this quarterback, and he comes in and starts doing what he needs to do. That's kind of why I would lean more towards the older quarterback, the Aaron Rodgers. Hey, if we're successful, great. If not, it's not that big of a loss because we just drafted this guy and we're going to get a high pick where we can go after an offensive lineman to protect our asset.
Yeah.
Because I do think majority of these quarterbacks, probably other than Shedeur Sanders, are guys who need at least a year under as a backup.
Sure. Well, and also this season has kind of showed us that, well, the last 2 seasons, that sometimes young quarterbacks aren't ready week 1. And, like Bryce Young, for example, after his 20th game, he's benched for Andy Dalton. Now, granted, he's back and he looks a lot better now. And that's kind of, in good fortune to him because Andy Dalton had an injury, which kind of put Bryce Young back in the lineup. But I think what makes me apprehensive about Aaron Rodgers is I'm not doubting the talent, the skill, the knowledge, all that stuff. What I am concerned with is the media circus that comes with Aaron Rodgers, all this stuff that he brings with us. Because yes, do I want one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the game, talent-wise, to lead our franchise quarterback into understanding the game, the speed of the game, and would it be nice to have a quarterback that we look competitive around? Yeah. However, every Monday, Sunday night when we're watching these post-games press conference and he says some stuff that makes you go, dude, what? Are you on earth? Did you take a hit of something before you got in front of the camera and started saying something? And then what's going to happen is that's going to put, do you think Max Crosby is going to want to deal with that kind of nonsense in the locker room week in and week out? It's bad enough that he's being asked if he thinks he'll be traded or how does he feel about a rebuild. Now you're going to throw Aaron Rodgers in there that says something, and he's not very casual about whatever he says. I mean, he's willing to throw coaches, teammates under the bus. Do you really think Max Crosby is going to be down for a locker room like that? I think that's where I'm apprehensive with Aaron Rodgers. I don't doubt his skill to throw the ball. I do think that you get him next year after he's had a whole offseason of training and getting healthier and more confident and healed and healthy. Yeah, we're probably going to see a much better Aaron Rodgers. But that doesn't take away the distraction and all that Aaron Rodgers has brought to the New York Jets, and not in a positive way, because he also was a center of attention last year on the injured reserve list. This whole I'm coming back, I'm going to come back early, this and that, reports of him undermining Robert Saleh, even when he was injured, not on the field. I don't know if I want that in the locker room. That's what I'm apprehensive about.
Devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Again.
Sure.
Could be chaotic. 1,000%. I agree. It could be catastrophic almost. But the Raiders are talked about, and it makes the Raiders a little bit more appealing. You're relevant.
Okay.
And I think that can entice incoming rookies. That can entice free agents. Because say what you will about the Jets, they had some guys. I mean, they were always in the mix because it was we have Aaron Rodgers. So yes, I can see it being not working out great, and it could get, Antonio Pierce fired. It could get a lot of guys fired. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it could bring a lot of good to the team. Okay, maybe Antonio Pierce isn't the guy. Maybe it is another guy. And now whatever quarterback you have behind Aaron Rodgers, now it's their team. And now you get to see what they do. And that whole circus is behind you. And now Aaron Rodgers has to worry about Aaron Rodgers. You don't have to worry about him anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my thought is it could be bad, but at the same time, hey, maybe it kind of weeds out some of the negativity that we had in the team in the first place. So,
yeah, I see what you're saying. And don't get me wrong, I'm the first one to tell you that we need a name in the Raiders organization that's going to attract the fans to show up to Allegiant Stadium. Because I am sick and tired of seeing Allegiant Stadium filled with another team's colors on a home game, and it feels like an away team. I'm sick and tired of that. Will that mean that Aaron Rodgers being on the team, one, makes us feel like we have a shot at every game because that's how skilled he is? Yeah, I like that. Does that mean that maybe Raider Nation will show up and show support and not let other teams, just infiltrate Allegiant Stadium? Yeah, that would be great. But those things sound great, but the internal rift that I am concerned with, that it would break apart this team, is what scares me more than the excitement of having that possibility. Now,
you don't think that Tom Brady could handle Aaron Rodgers? Do you think because if I'm Mark Davis,
yeah,
my thing would be, listen, man, we got Aaron Rodgers. He's an older quarterback. You were that guy. But he's a little more chaotic than you ever were. So do you think you could get him in the right spot? That's kind of the way I would go. I'd be like, you got to handle Aaron. And if he messes up, that's on you, type thing.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, because it's been reported that Tom Brady is going to be heavily involved in operations with the Raiders. Like, it sounds like
that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. It sounds like Mark Davis is trying to do everything he can to step back and not be responsible for this hire, that's football related. It sounds like he's doing his best to, like, maybe I need to find better guys to make football decisions, and that's where Tom Brady comes into play. I think, though, Tom Brady would think more or less of like how you and I were. It's like, look, is he talented? Yes. But you know who else was really talented that Tom Brady played with and it burnt in front of him? Antonio Brown. And I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers will turn into Antonio Brown, go shirtless, run off the field, anything like that.
Maybe.
But what I'm saying is that Aaron Rodgers brings a type of distraction that I don't know if Tom Brady wants in the locker room, because we can get the same excitement out of the rookie, and Tom Brady maybe working with the rookie is a better shot for us than having Aaron Rodgers learn behind him. Because, I mean, if you're going to wonder if Aaron Rodgers is a good leader to have for our rookie quarterback, hey, look no better than your minority owner in Tom Brady, the winningest quarterback of all time. Like, that's a pretty good alternative plan as well. So we'll see. Do I think the Raiders will ultimately make a play for Rodgers? Probably. Any quarterback in any team in the NFL that needs a quarterback is probably going to make a play for Rodgers, because it looks like he's going to be available. Now, will he stay in New York? I think it's more likely. I think it's more likely that he goes to the Niners, who would be Super Bowl contenders all over again if he were to go there. And just the way that he can throw the ball really changes the dynamic of that offense. And so we'll see with all that. But that's what I would say with Aaron Rodgers' situation, and why my concern with the Raiders and Rodgers kind of falls within what I'm seeing with the Jets, the distraction, the pointing of the fingers, not really taking responsibility for what your part was in the situation. That's what I'm concerned with.
And I'm just going to be clear here. I really don't want the Raiders to do that. I'm just trying to throw out different scenarios that, like, if the Raiders did sign Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't be surprised. And then I can justify, okay, this is why they're doing it. They're going to have the rookie quarterback learn under him, have a year, and try and Patrick Mahomes it. Right. But I'm with you. I'd rather not have that. I'd rather I would lean more towards, like, getting a Sam Darnold, and, if it works out, great. If it doesn't, whatever, you're going to learn. Honestly, in my opinion, I feel like a quarterback learns, specifically a rookie quarterback learns under a guy who's not very good. Yeah. Versus a guy who's, like, great, because all you see is all these great things, but you don't see, okay, how do I overcome the negativity on this team, if that makes sense. And so I think I would lean more towards, like, a Sam Darnold type quarterback, or I don't know who else is going to be. I mean, I should have brought it up.
A couple of players. So Justin Fields is reported.
Daniel Jones.
So funny you say that. So Justin Fields is a quarterback that's probably going to be on the market. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be on the market. Sam Darnold is probably going to be on the market. Daniel Jones is probably going to be on the market. Would you want the Raiders to make a play for Daniel Jones?
Is Daniel Jones at $40 million?
No.
No, I don't want that. If it were if I wanted to be somewhat competitive, I would go Justin Fields. If I want a guy, a rookie quarterback to learn under a guy, that's a tough one. I would probably go more Sam Darnold, because Sam had really low lows and now has a really high. Right. And so to me, that's better, because Justin Fields is still in the thought of, I can still be a starting quarterback in the NFL, and I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't disagree with that. Mm-hmm. But that's where that issue lies, where, okay, well, now we can't get rid of Justin Fields because he's doing really well, just because we're hoping that this rookie quarter, you know what I mean? And is he going to be that helpful? I'm not saying Justin Fields is that kind of guy who's like, no, forget you, I'm not going to help you. Right. But at the same time, you could run into that situation where that's really, really bad for your rookie quarterback. So I would more go towards more of a veteran guy. Like, I could see Daniel Jones, but at the same time, like, the examples that Daniel Jones has had backing him up haven't been great, but you could argue the Giants really haven't done well at that draft. So I don't know, that it's a tough one, but I honestly would probably lean more towards like Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones type guys. And honestly, I would rather get Aaron Rodgers before Justin Fields, just because I know, again, I can get out of the Aaron Rodgers, sweepstakes real quick.
Right. In my opinion, Justin Fields needs to go to a situation where he's not the number one guy. He can learn under who had the starter. Like, for example, Steelers, I thought, was a better organization for him to like understand the NFL, the speed, and get that bad taste of the Chicago Bears franchise out of his mouth. Yeah. However, another team, I think would be really good for him to go to like really get a sense of how to play his best would be like the Philadelphia Eagles and how like they utilize Jalen Hurts and his running ability, throwing. I think that would be a pretty good team for him to go to and back up for. So that way, like, okay, when the situation calls for, the offense is kind of catered towards that type of specialist and how they play and stuff. I feel like that would fit him. But in terms of like him just being coached up like by Mike Tomlin, I think was the best move for him. I don't want him on the Raiders, though, because I think the expectations would be like, okay, he's our answer for an immediate future that maybe doesn't include Justin Fields. And I don't know if I don't want this to be a misunderstanding of like, I'm not looking to commit to 5 years. I'm looking to commit to like 1 year,
Yeah.
Sam Darnold to me would fit that bill of like a bridge quarterback, like which is what he's doing now in the Minnesota Vikings. Make no mistake, he's not the future in Minnesota. He is a backup guy. When JJ McCarthy comes back healthy, Sam Darnold is either going to be on the bench or, on another team. And there's no way that he's going back to Minnesota as the number one guy. That's just not how it's going to work. For Daniel Jones, I think he needs to go to an organization that is better suited for like letting him be a backup. I don't think Daniel Jones is a franchise guy. Is he like a really good backup? Probably. Like, go to the Los Angeles Rams to kind of learn how to be a quarterback all over again with Sean McVay. I think that's better for him. Go to like the San Francisco 49ers, who ironically enough, they had Sam Darnold the year before. And it looks like to me, Sam Darnold is playing better, being a better quarterback since then. I think that's a better move for Daniel Jones than like to put him, let's say, with the Cleveland Browns, who you can clearly see like need a quarterback. And, Jameis Winston is great and all, but like Daniel Jones, they might be looking at as like, okay, we'll sign this guy to lead our franchise. And I don't think that's the best for Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones needs to learn how to play football and just be a backup and be a good teammate and be in a successful organization and not worry about being the guy because of how it all kind of deteriorated in New York. And he struggled with turnovers. Like that's something that is going to follow him. And a lot of teams are going to be apprehensive to make him the guy because of that. So
a great spot for Daniel Jones, to be perfectly honest, as a backup would be the Kansas City Chiefs.
Don't say that. Don't you?
I mean, I'm just
don't you put that out there?
It would be great. I'm just saying.
Well, funny thing.
You're mad at it.
Funny thing about that. Do you know who's the backup right now for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Man, I used to. I don't right now.
Carson Wentz. Imagine
yes, I did know.
Imagine if he's a quarterback that's thrown back into the free agency mix of whatever team. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Former number 2 overall pick. Could he make a difference on a franchise? Who knows?
Possible.
Okay, Drew. So I'm going to skip actually, no. There's one question of the NBA that I'm going to ask your opinion on, but we're going to round out our NFL topic with some MVP. So after 12 weeks, Drew, obviously we have Lamar Jackson playing really well, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, probably some others I'm missing off this list. But is there somebody in your opinion that is the MVP up to this point? And if so, who is that player?
Ooh, that's a tough one. God. You know what? Lamar Jackson's had a really great year. Josh Allen, obviously, Jared Goff. But if I'm being perfectly honest, the guy that I think right now is my front runner is the guy who just had an amazing game last night, and that was Saquon Barkley. I would actually go Barkley because I know basically it's a quarterback. It's a
Yeah.
quarterback award, but like Goff has had a great year. Jackson's had a great year. Allen has had a great year. Um, and I don't think there's a question about those, but I don't think they've been like above and beyond where Saquon went from a crappy team. He goes on to a really good team. A lot of people are like, okay, he's going to be good. And then we're seeing all this stuff and you're like, oh, he's really good.
Right.
Like, oh, shoot, we're in trouble type stuff. So
Right.
that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. I think Saquon has been the number one running back. Like, yeah, Derrick Henry has been really good. I think Saquon's been that much better.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing. I think Josh Allen ultimately is going to walk away with the MVP. I think the stats, the way that he's been able to protect the ball, if the Bills continue to be a very good AFC team, storylines in the NFL just lead to that quarterback is probably going to get the MVP. And I think Josh Allen will probably be awarded the MVP. But there's two things, though, that I think I have to stress is sometimes the most valuable player award gets lost in what it actually means, in my opinion. Most valuable player means that, like, if this player was not on this team, how bad would this team be? You know, like, clearly that this player holds this much value to where they're remaining competitive. Really, the only reason why this team is even in a discussion of possibly winning is because of XYZ player. Saquon Barkley is that one to me as well. I think Saquon Barkley needs to be in this conversation for that same factor. Derrick Henry has been great, but the fact that Lamar Jackson is kind of also playing a factor into, you know, how well it's been and all this other stuff, I think is another conversation as well. Like that could be why Derrick Henry is successful. Joe Burrow statistically is having an MVP type season. The win-loss record just doesn't reflect that. But if you were to take Joe Burrow off the Bengals, how bad of a team would they be? They'd be worse than the Raiders, in my opinion. They would be pretty awful. Now, Saquon Barkley, though, you added him to that team, essentially the same roster from last year. Really not a lot of difference, but you put in Saquon Barkley, and that's how much better the Eagles look. The last running back to win MVP, 2012, with Adrian Peterson and the Minnesota Vikings. So it's possible. But if there was one other player that just shows immense value, it would be Saquon Barkley. I ultimately think Josh Allen, though, will walk away with it just because of it's a quarterback award nowadays. But Saquon, I think, should be thought of and maybe even favored just because of how the Eagles look with him in that lineup. Like, stupid crazy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And sorry, I don't know if you can hear my updates going off right now. It's fantasy football. Sorry, Justin Herbert just scored a touchdown.
You need to turn your notifications off during showtime, sir.
Well, I didn't know, but I'm very sorry. Anyway, and I have like multiple shares of Charger players, so I'm getting like 4 of them at a time.
Sweet.
Anyway, but yeah, it's hard for me to say. I'm with you. I think Josh Allen is probably going to be the guy because I don't think anyone thought he was going to have still this great of a year without, you know, Stephon Diggs and all that. And now he's proving it. I think Lamar Jackson is having a great year, but you could make the argument, okay, but you know, that play is being opened by Derrick Henry a little bit.
Right.
So you can make that argument. And honestly, Saquon, I mean, could have made Jalen Hurts the number one guy, but Saquon is just having such a great year. It's just like, Jalen, just throw like 20 times and you're good. Yeah. We're just going to hand it off. And so, honestly, I really like what Colin Cowherd brought up today. He kind of said, like, you know, the Giants were saying, oh, we don't want to pay a running back, or we don't want to pay a quarterback, you know, $40 million to hand it off to a $12 million or $22 million running back. And it was like, well, the Eagles are doing that. They're paying their quarterback $51 million to a $22 million running back. And it seems to be working out. So,
you know, yeah.
You know, and so I was like, you know, it's a really good point. maybe you're overthinking it a little bit. So,
well, here's the irony of it. The New York Giants would probably be, I would say in the camp of like a 500 team, because if Barkley stays on that team, you still have Daniel Jones. That offensive line is not that bad. And you have Malik Neighbors, who is, by all accounts, going to be a all-pro receiver, number one type guy. And he is a phenomenal player. You had a three-headed horse with a pretty decent running back or pretty decent offensive line. And because you didn't want to overpay in certain areas that are actually highly regarded, now look at the state of the team that you have. You've got to start all over again. And there's truthfully not that kind of talent floating by. It's not like you're going to pick up another Saquon Barkley, just in the draft immediately. There's a reason why Barkley is so unique.
Yeah.
So just to close on the NFL chapter, before we wrap the show though, Drew, obviously as you're the basketball coach, I did want to get one NBA question in, and ironically enough, it's not about the Lakers. I just want your I just want your honest take about this whole Joel Embiid saga with not playing in back-to-backs, with basically gaslighting the fans. Tyrese Maxey having to call him out for showing up to meetings late and not being a leader. Tell me what you're thinking when you hear about all this stuff coming out of the Sixers reporting.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people compare it to the NFL. A lot of people are like, well, this is basically Aaron Rodgers. The difference is Aaron Rodgers, although great, the Jets are now saying we're going to release him, where the 76ers wouldn't do that. They're not just going to be like, okay, well, he's just too much. He's not performing. He's not even going to play back-to-backs. We're going to let him go. It's not like that. Maybe it should be. But unfortunately, you're putting too much money. There's not as many players to his caliber as well, So that's a harder thing to get everyone like, release him, because although this is frustrating, and if you're a Sixers fan, you're sitting back and going, God, this guy is a diva. Like, why are we even messing with this? At the same time, like, it's kind of what you have to go through, because unfortunately he's a fantastic player, and you've put so much work into getting this guy your number one guy. Like, you guys tanked for Joel Embiid. You guys made trust the process a thing because of Joel Embiid. You knew drafting him, he was hurt. And you waited forever until he finally came in and looked a little bit raw, and then he finally started. Okay, now, I see what you were seeing. I see what you guys are doing, and then he became this great talent. I mean, he became such a great talent that people were like, maybe Rihanna should have, married this guy. I don't remember. I don't know if you remember all that, but he was like, I want to date Rihanna. He was trying to get a date, and anyway, he was just like, he wasn't at that caliber. She was like, when you get multiple Pro Bowls or All-Star game awards, then we'll talk or whatever. And then he ended up getting it, and everyone was like, Rihanna, maybe, and no, we're good. Yeah. But anyway, but he's this great talent, and listen, I think the Sixers years have, in my honest opinion, have run its course. Yeah. I think he's done with Philadelphia. I think he realizes, yes, I'm the focal point here, which is great, but at the end of the day, we're not winning championships. And that's what I came here to do. And we can hate the guy for the way he's going about it, and I think it's the wrong way. But at the same time, I can understand why he's frustrated. I can understand why he's having all these sudden outbursts. Hell, they got rid of Ben Simmons. They got rid of James Harden. They got rid of all these guys that were working with him because they're like, dude, you're still our guy. And he's like, well, I'm trying to win here. Like, can we try and keep someone? And so I think that's where his frustration is coming. And I'm understanding where it's coming from. I don't think it's the right way to go. but that's just me. But you can't deny his talent. But this is what's different about, high school and professional. Professional is you're getting paid all this money. We're investing in you. Whereas high school, hey, you may be the best player, but if you're not performing in the classroom, if you're not, behaving in the school, sorry, like you can maybe someone else will take you, but that's kind of, I think, where some of these players get so used to being catered to, where they like expect that, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be treated. I can say whatever I want. And I mean, the Sixers could do the funniest thing. I mean, they could just outright release him, or like tank and get rid of everyone and just keep him. And he gets so frustrated where he's like, all right, trade me. But at the same time, I do feel like the Sixers, I think they're done with him, and I think he's done with them. And I think right now the only thing they're trying to do is find a trade partner, because you're not going to release him in the NBA. It's just not the reality of the situation. You're not just going to wait until he's so disgruntled that he's just like, whatever, I don't care what you guys do, just get me off of this team. It's not going to happen. He's gonna play regardless. But you know what? You did what you could. It's not working out. I think it's okay to admit we worked on it. And to be honest, whoever you give Joel Embiid to, he's still got a few really good years left in him. But at the same time, he's not going to be healthy throughout the year. He's always hurt. And he's not going to be playing back-to-backs anymore. I mean, I don't think that's just on the Sixers. I think that's just the rest of his career. And so if that's what's happening, like, he's getting older. It's now time to start thinking, hey, if we trade him, we could get 2, 3, 4 first-round picks. And I know you don't want to rebuild, but Tyrese Maxey, for all intents and purposes, is a really good guard. You already have a really talented guard at the helm, and a lot of the guys think he's the leader. I don't even think they look at Embiid as the leader as much. I think the offense just runs through Embiid because that's what they've always done. But I think the Sixers team could be really good even without Embiid. And they could get a lot for Joel Embiid still. Do I think the Sixers are going to do that? Probably not. I think they're going to wait at least another year. Yeah.
Well, they just signed Embiid to a 3-year, $196 million extension in September. And, they also acquired Paul George. So they have a lot of cap space allotted to those two guys.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how they've underachieved, underperformed. I think, well, this is the exception. I think, and I understand everything you're saying about, like, look, Joel Embiid, he feels like maybe, the Sixers could do better about keeping players or whatnot, and this, that, and the other. And he's done a lot for the Philadelphia fans. I think if he was playing every night and doing his best to be competitive and then saying, like, look, it's just not working out, that's one thing. What I think I take exception in is the visual quitting is what it feels like, is that I see happening. And that doesn't send a great message, because this is all intents and purposes. Joel Embiid should be regarded as, like, an all-star, all NBA kind of talent. For him to just, like, start quitting, and really the only reason he's giving is because of injury. But I can make the argument that because he's not playing as often as he should, it's causing more injury. Like, you look at LeBron James, who's nearly 10 years older than him, and he's running laps around him in terms of, like, playing on back-to-backs, playing 30-plus minutes, and averaging nearly a triple-double, in his 22nd, 23rd season, and then you have Joel Embiid, who's now 30. He's not 35. He's not 36. He's 30. And yet it feels like Joel Embiid is not going to make it another 2 seasons. That's what it feels like.
It feels like Joel Embiid is like 37.
It feels like it feels like he's about to retire. That's what it feels like. Yeah. And yet, no, he's 30. we're older than him by almost 5 years. And yet it feels like that the way that he's carrying himself, I'm never going to play back-to-backs ever again. It's like, when did you become 40? When did you all of a sudden, like, I just can't do it anymore? What are you talking about? I can't do it anymore. Like LeBron James over here at 40 years of age is doing it every single night on players younger than you. I think that's what it is. And to me, it's like quitting on your team is the biggest faux pas I could see, to where it's like, look, if you want to get out somewhere, that's fine, but don't quit on your team.
Yeah.
You know, you got a lot of guys over there that are looking up to you, and for you to quit, it just sends a bad message, in my opinion.
And that's why I say I think this is now the time to, capitalize on Joel Embiid. Like, listen, it's not working out. Tyrese Maxey, and I completely forgot about Paul George is on the Sixers now. So, I mean, Paul George can be injured. I would still feel great about Tyrese Maxey. You have Paul George, and then you can get a couple of draft picks, and you can get a big, coming in. I feel like it could be actually really beneficial. Not only are you getting a lot of picks, you still have a really good team nonetheless. I know you just signed him to a big contract, but you can find someone who's going to buy it. I mean, honestly, the Atlanta Hawks would buy him right now. Like that, because now you're not having to run the offense through him the whole time. You have got Trae Young,
right?
Or I'm trying to think of teams that would benefit. I mean, I'm blanking right now on all these teams, but
him and Ben Simmons teaming up again in Brooklyn, maybe that's an option.
That would be so funny
because that worked out so well in Philadelphia.
They weren't mad at each other or anything. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of good that could come about it for Sixers, and I think it sounds like it's doom and gloom, but this could actually be really beneficial for you. You could be ahead of the curve. And that's what I would like. I would want to be ahead of it before it comes crashing down, and then you're like trading Joel Embiid for a 43-year-old LeBron James. Like, you know what I mean? Like, although they'd probably be still better. Like, but you get what I'm saying. Like that, you're trading him for a non-future player. Where you trade him now, you get rid of that contract first, and secondly, you get a lot in return. That could be really beneficial. And now you have the future ready, and you have time to think about, okay, who do we want? What's the vision here, where the other team now has to deal with Joel Embiid, and he's got to learn to kind of play with certain guys and whatnot. Honestly, a team that just came to my mind that I think could be beneficial. I don't think they would ever do it because Thibodeau would never allow it, but the Knicks would be an interesting one. You could trade Cat, and Cat would be on a really good Sixers team, and I think he would benefit just like what he's doing with the Knicks right now. So that's just my off-the-cuff thought. But if I'm the Sixers, you got to get rid of them. If personally,
it's hard to keep him in the locker room the way it's happening now. So yeah. I'd agree.
Yeah.
All right, Drew. Well, I don't have any more NBA questions for you. We're up against the clock right now, but really, really glad, man, we were able to jump back on for an episode during this break, and hopefully we've got a couple more. Although, you've got some games and practices coming up, so it'll probably be a little bit of time before that happens again. However, don't forget there's also Stingers up. So if you guys want to keep listening to Drew, there's Stingers Up, which is his Sanger West Hornets podcast that everyone could listen to, and really quick episodes. It was like 25 minutes, as I think is the longest one that's on there.
Yeah, they're quick.
Very quick, very informative, and I love getting polos where you tell me about another student that heard it, or somebody else within Sanger West that heard it and enjoyed it. So I think it's really cool that it's kind of spreading throughout the campus.
Yeah, shout out to Sanger West, man. Like they're spreading the podcast like wildfire, which is really cool because I every day I get someone new coming up. Hey, I just listened to the new episode of Drew Code. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I had a couple of teachers, which was like the first time that I've had that in a while. came up to me and were like, "Hey, I saw your podcast. It was really cool." And I was like, "Oh, thank you, appreciate it." So, yeah, it's been crazy, and I appreciate everyone sharing, liking, even just watching. I really appreciate everyone being willing to do that. I think that's really cool. So, thank you, Sanger West.
Yeah. Who would have thought, man, this thing started in my garage with an iPad, and now look at what we're doing. So isn't
It's
it
funny
crazy?
as I actually was telling one of the students, they're like, "How did you start a podcast?" And I was like, "Honestly, we were just in my buddy's garage for like 2 months, and then we were like, we need to not do this in a garage." And we
Yeah,
ended
especially when it got hot and we were sweating and dying.
Yeah, and cold.
See the sweat rolling down our brows during
Remember
the video.
when we did 2 bays in a pod with Brad?
Yeah.
And we're like freezing in my garage.
Yeah.
Like, oh God. We're like,
I miss doing that show sometimes.
Yeah, it was fun.
You need to free up some time so we can do it again. We need more shows.
Yeah, let me get right on that.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's it. We're gonna close the show now. I'm really thankful that you guys tuned into Drew Code. Don't forget to go and follow us on all the social media platforms. Yes. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I am not plugging the formerly known Twitter site anymore because I'm just never on there. But we are on Blue Sky and on the other platforms as well. So go on there, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the post notifications, and that way you guys are updated when we have Sanger West podcast Stingers up and then Drew Code coming out. And then, Drew, do you have anything you want to give the people before we sign off?
I will just say that girls basketball has a game tomorrow at Sanger West. We are playing Parlier. It'll just be JV and varsity, but I will probably be I'm going to be on the mic.
Booth?
yeah, I'll be in the booth. I'll be on the mic, announcing and everything. So come out, watch, support. I'm telling you what, I've said this on Stingers Up. This varsity girls basketball team is going to be a whole lot different this year. They have been working extremely hard, and the connection that these girls have with each other and the way they've learned. I almost feel like a lot of the coaches have kind of like stalled a little bit because they're like, we have to think of more plays because they like know them all. Yeah. So that's really cool. So I honestly, come out and watch them. You'll be pleasantly surprised of how good this team really looks.
Right on. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in to next week's show. Be kind to one another, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.
See you.